Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the show and having a chat to us. I'm so keen to have a chat with you about your background in clinical psychology and everything that you've really immersed yourself in surrounding sleep quality, sleep deprivation, and how it affects the family and the dynamics within the household.
Thanks so much for having me on. Sleep deprivation can be such a challenge. I guess I'm not surprised that it's a form of torture used in prisoner of war camps because having two kids have obviously experienced it firsthand. I, even knowing all the science, have definitely had my fair share of sleepless nights, which just shows us that babies aren't robots and how it impacts everyone, and it's not fun.
It can definitely be a challenging scenario, and I always just tell myself everything's temporary. And I feel like sometimes when our child has um, a good night's sleep, if I say it out loud, somehow the gods hear us, and uh, the, ne-
Totally.
the next day everything just falls on its ear. But I'd love to hear some of your experiences in guiding parents through, being able to create I suppose, a safe environment for their children to be able to have a safe, sound night's sleep, and also an environment for them to be able to relate to one another. And obviously, our dads here in this group, who are predominantly the people listening to this, I'd love to get your insights into what their function, the way you see it as a dad, how practical a dad can be in this environment.
Thank you. Well, I'll start off by just kind of sharing like a little bit of my journey. So I got into this, I think for most people, when they become like a sleep consultant or a sleep expert, generally they themselves have had a pretty horrendous little sleeper, which sets them on this mission to knowing everything there is to finding out about sleep. For me, it was a bit different in that I was working in the field of clinical psychology with parents who had really bad postnatal depression and anxiety, and dads, of course, being affected too. So there's 1 in 10 impacted by this. It's really common, but often not spoken about. And I couldn't believe how much of that was linked to the sleep. And I thought that babies just slept, obviously not having had one myself when I started this off. Everyone talks about, oh, I slept like a baby. And I thought it was so easy to get a bub to sleep. And I started thinking, how hard can it be? Like, surely if I can get these little ones sleeping, it means that their parents are going to be sleeping, and then they're going to have more energy to actually enjoy this journey, and it will help a lot with some of the depression and anxiety symptoms. So I began researching, and immediately I was overwhelmed because it's so confusing and so conflicting, like everything out there, that it's so hard for parents to know what to follow. So I sort of came up with using everything I know about different parenting styles and being very familiar with, child development, and looking at, different temperaments, different little personalities. I came up with science based. So everything I do, it's all evidence based, but very much individualized to putting different plans together depending on little ones like temperaments and personalities. And yeah, it's kind of just grown and evolved, sharing the research. And I always, I guess, starting this, having not had kids, um, I would often get a lot of questions about that, which shows how much of a science it is. So yeah,
Mm.
that's a bit about sleep science.
Uh,
Um,
on the science topic, and obviously, coming from a position where you hadn't had children until recently, I find it fascinating because there's obviously a great depth of study and science surrounding this. So, like, completely selfishly, where I am at in my particular life with my beautiful wife, I'd love to get some insight into. And you did say,
sure.
you treat each case individually, and I do love that. But I'm just wondering if there's any insights that you could offer for newborns in and around that, say, 7 week mark, that little baby Jude, my child happens to be at. and any insights that you could offer in that sense.
Of course. So we're all about, so obviously, of course, you're in one of those positions where you are juggling like a newborn and then probably a tornado toddler. Like when you've got the two, it's a whole new ball game of, okay, now I've got to, would love to practice all these little settling techniques and strategies, but actually I've got my other little one who wants my full undivided attention and is now testing the boundaries and pushing the limits and doing everything that toddlers do. They say it's like having a blender without a lid at times with these toddlers. And so that poses like a whole set of challenges. But when it comes to newborn sleep, we love and are so passionate about shaping healthy sleep habits from the get-go and from the very beginning, and just empowering parents with all this evidence-based information and advice, because so many parents, I guess, will wait till down the track, till things have really like become a problem, and then look at sort of like trying to fix it all. And there's so much info out there on the birth, and there's so much information out there on breastfeeding, which is amazing, and it's great to empower people with, all of this knowledge. But often with the birth, it's, one day, and you can have your birth plan or your birth preferences, and often like nothing ever goes to plan. And then there's breastfeeding, and although it's so worthy and so helpful to be like informed and empowered, so much of that you're learning on the job. And I find with this sleep, of course, with the settling techniques, again, like you're learning a lot of that like on the job as well, as you implement it and you see, what works for your little one. But there is so much that parents don't know about when it comes to like reading sleepy cues and looking at the awake windows. And, at around that 7-week mark, we're looking at like 60 to 90 minutes, but also just having expectations of, what's normal, and that newborns do get up during the night to have feedings. And then you've got these societal pressures of people asking like, is your little one sleeping through yet? And then you feeling bad that they're not, but actually like none of them are anyway. So I think there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I know for me personally, the apex of my kind of mental fragility and emotional fragility happens deep in the night. When I wake up and I've had my coffee, I'm good to go. It's like a brand new day. But there's that. It can be a very fragile position at 2:30 in the morning when your child has gas, and it doesn't, he or she doesn't stop, or you can't get any of the air out, should I say. And there's certain frustrations being communicated between partners, and it's a challenging situation to be in. From a psychological standpoint, do you have any advice to offer in those
moments,
deep baby cave situations?
Oh, there's such difficult situations to be in, and I think something which so many parents experience, like I think so many parents have been there, they can pretty much relate to exactly what you just spoke in. Like I feel like that just speaks to so many people's souls of exactly what they go through. And I think it's this notion which we love here at Sleep Science, which is parents really looking after themselves, and this aspect of like self-care and trying to really, if you can, like just kind of be in that moment, be present, be mindful, just knowing that like nothing's going to last forever, like it is just temporary, and being able to obviously have, like we love empowering parents with a toolkit of practical strategies that they can actually use in those moments, and being able to read their little one's cues and knowing, okay, if there is trapped wind, here are 3 ways that you can, birth them and try and get that wind out. And even knowing that a lot of those, refluxy symptoms look a lot like overtiredness in terms of arching their back, making fists becoming rigid, like all of those things. But often when you're in that moment, I think it's just about trying to be there. Like if you're feeling upset and you're becoming like agitated or even like angry towards your bub, which a lot of parents have, I think it's about like putting your baby down in a safe space, walking away, trying to regroup, like take some deep breaths, knowing that that is okay to do, and that you can take time out for yourself. But also, like during the day, like everyone says, oh, sleep when the baby sleeps, and I'm kind of like, oh, why don't you fold washing when the baby folds the washing? Like if only it were, you know, that easy to do when there's a million other things to do and you've got a toddler. But I think taking time out as well during the day to just do something for yourself, do something that makes you feel like you, even if it is a small thing, even if it's literally like scrolling through Instagram or having a hot cup of tea or just something. I think parents often do lose sight of the person that they were before having a bub. So they've now got this new identity and that old person is completely lost. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. I think, you know, you are still the same person that you were, and finding things to make yourself feel like you and feel normal. And if that for you is, you know, cleaning, I wish I was like you, because like I'm definitely like not, that's not my best strength. But if it is, you know, watching a Netflix episode of something or taking a walk or doing something, I just think, yeah, trying to keep that self-care going, because you can't physically like pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely true. And a lot of our viewers and listeners are fathers in the household, and not to gender stereotype, but if you know, directly after a child is born, there is going to be some aspect of maternity leave, and generally speaking, less of a paternity leave. And there's an expectation for the father to hop back on track and start providing for the family at a certain stage. And I think, you know, a motto with Hero is really to be able to weave self-care with from a father's perspective into that picture as well. Do you have any advice for the dads out there when it comes to plugging themselves into this rich tapestry of new parenthood?
Sure. So it's so challenging and it's so tricky for dads. And I think one, like especially for the mums who are able to and have chosen to breastfeed, it can often be quite tricky for dads with that, because, you know, you men and your useless nipples who can't help out. Like it's hard. And so I think trying, if you can, to help out, like where possible, whether it's, you know, bringing the breastfeeding mum a drink of water or cooking like a nice nutritious meal. Like sometimes some of those practical things, when it's the last thing you want to do, and, you know, our hormones, like, let's not lie, they're coming down. Like you've had 40 weeks or so of pregnancy where your hormones kind of go from 0 to 100, and then you've had that bub and they're coming right down, and we can get a little bit psycho and crazy, and the hormones are flying and we're emotional wrecks, and like all of that I think is normal and helpful for dads. And everyone's experience is different, and some women are not like that, but I know for me I had my fair share of emotions flying. And I think it's for dads knowing, you know, what to expect, like it's, and also for you, like you guys are going through a huge journey, and even if it is your second child, it is a huge adjustment, sometimes even bigger for some families, going from, you know, the one child to two to three when you become outnumbered. Like it's huge. And just kind of coming to terms with your new identity, not losing sight of who you were, just taking time out for yourselves, but also time to try and, you know, do some of those more practical things, you know, to help out, can be really helpful. And so for some like breastfeeding mums, like they'll decide to, you know, express a feed if they want to exclusively breastfeed, just to, you know, have a break, get some rest. Dads can then be part of that. But even if not, there are still so many things in terms of changing nappies, getting little ones dressed, doing practical things, and taking care of yourselves. And I know it sounds, it's always the last thing that's looked at, But if dads aren't taking care of themselves, then they're not going to be in a position to look after everyone else. And I often use the analogy of, oh, you know, that flight attendant announcement, which no one's heard in a while due to, you know, COVID. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping others and before putting on your other mask. But it is really true, because if you're not doing that, like, you're not going to be able to like help the family. And so I think there's a lot of guilt for dads around going for a run, doing exercise, you know, doing like a food shop and buying like all these different like healthy foods. And it's like, oh, the quicker thing is to just, you know, grab something like quick and unhealthy or whatever it is. But actually making time to do those things, like the research has shown, like that's all evidence-based, like it really does help, but it's easier said than done, I think.
Look, it is, but I feel like a really open, fluid communication channel between both parents can be a really helpful platform to be able to, you know, kind of discuss that openly, and
100%.
and setting up your environment, like you said, to be able to go for a run for a half an hour, to be able to say, this is when I'm planning to do it. Would you prefer I go at a different time, or whatever it might be? But you know, you've been dealing with postnatal depression in women for a period of time. Have you had any experience dealing with postnatal depression with men?
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where, like, when I'm in a room and I'm doing a workshop and there's, you know, 30 parents there, it's kind of like, you know, there's going to be 3 dads in the audience who are definitely struggling with this. And I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers are actually higher and are just underreported, because it's something that people don't want to like necessarily admit. I think there's such a stigma attached. I
Mhm.
think that it's something which there are some places in the world where they're so much more ahead of the game. Like if we talk about, you know, just places like Finland or Norway, like Sweden, all those places, it's just like a mandatory thing that men take what they call parental leave. And even the language like around it, like here we call it like maternity leave or paternity leave, and parental leave is only just slowly emerging. And if people take it, it's like a luxury, or it's sometimes almost like frowned upon, like, aren't you running your career progression, like taking time off from your job when you should be, you know, climbing that corporate ladder or doing whatever it is. And I think it's just so nice in some of these other countries that it's just like the done thing. Like the dads are there, they're part of it. The education, I think, definitely needs to be improved. I think at the moment there's this huge, like with new parents, even going through it myself, and maybe even with COVID, it's become even worse because all these birth classes and lactation classes, like a lot has been cancelled. But I think knowing what to expect, like people picture this baby and it's beautiful, and you think of everything that you're going to gain. It's like getting this farm, and you spend your weekends, you know, picking out prams and capsules and high chairs and all the bits and pieces. And then the baby arrives and you have to take it home and keep this human alive. And you're sort of like, what am I doing? And it's really like overwhelming, I think, for so many families, because they don't know what to expect. And there's this huge like loss of identity, like the person they were before. For parents, it's like, you know, they may have built up this career and now this baby, and now it's taking away their sleep, and they're losing sleep and they're losing the life that they had. And I think that isn't spoken about nearly enough.
The understanding of loss when you step into parenthood, it's like this paradox that a lot of parents don't really consider when they're stepping into that. And I've found, even stepping into a lifetime relationship with a significant other, there's this loss of complete and utter independence and selfishness of you being the center of your own universe, and then needing to share that universe with somebody else. And then all of a sudden this other entirely brand new being that comes from your and your partner's genetics, that is like made by you and completely dependent on you, rocks up and cannot survive without your complete care and attention. And that is like a profoundly beautiful and an amazing something to be incredibly joyful about, but also it's like a very, very stressful situation at times.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that is just a huge, huge, huge change to a person's life. And I think sometimes people don't actually think about how profound and how huge that change actually is for them, and the effect that that can start to have on things like their relationship, like their sex life. Like it literally can shake up every aspect of your life. And I think it is a lot of the focus is on, you know, what you gain. And again, like this is a whole thing, like it's even with that first child, that second child, like it doesn't matter. Like often this, you know, having number two brings a whole set of challenges because people somehow feel like, oh, you can, like with the first, everyone's bringing food over and making a big fuss and a big deal. And then the second one comes along and you're kind of like, listen, guys, I need all the help I can get.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, you've got this, like you've done it before, and the help is almost like less than ever.
It's no longer a novelty in your peer's life. But you're
No
right.
longer a novelty.
You've got this overly demanding, like you said, three-nager who's doing their thing late at night as well. The thing I never really considered, I remember I had a vague memory of witching hour with our first child, and now this point in time, this witching hour is just
witching
it's
hours often.
it fully is witching hours. There's just demands left, right, and center, and you just like
Totally.
you find yourself looking at your partner's in your partner's eyes, just going, okay, right, let's switch it up. You go take this one, I'll take that one, and then I don't want you, I want mum. Switch it up again. Do you have any techniques or situations like that? And also, like I mentioned to you before, perhaps off air, I know you've had techniques or you do have courses when it comes to dealing with toddlers as well. Any advice that you could offer to parents of toddlers as opposed to newborns?
Absolutely. So yeah, we've got like online courses like for every single age group, whether it's navigating that newborn stage to dealing with that infamous like 4-month sleep regression, which scientifically is actually a progression. And then there's the whole, 5 to 24 months, and then they're ready to transition into a bed and become a toddler. And we do have techniques and strategies for all of that, just because we find that it's different for every like age and stage. And I think it's about, if you can get on top of sleep, and that's what we've kind of realized in this puzzle, it just makes your life so much easier. Those, little things like when you're exhausted and you have an argument, like, and you're feeling agitated and overwhelmed and exhausted and things like that, it can make things like a lot worse. And so arming yourself with all these like tools when it comes to sleep is key. And toddlers definitely pose a whole sense of challenges. The first thing I think is just understanding what is going on in your toddler's brain. Like sometimes without even changing a thing other than your own mindset and your expectations around them, and knowing what's going on can change everything. And knowing that, the brain's not fully developed yet, the prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. So when they, flip the lid or whatever you want to call it, it's really because the brain is like all over the show and flipping on its head, because toddlers just cannot, regulate their emotions in the same way. And there are a certain group of kids who just really, really struggle with toddlerhood because they almost like feel more deeply and everything is like a much bigger deal. And so we find firstly, just understanding the science and what's going on in their brain just makes such a difference. And we run through that in detail in our online course. And then having strategies to actually navigate your way through. So whether it's, they're looking for that sense of control and autonomy often because parents are controlling their whole life in terms of what they do and what they wear and where they go. And so giving them like choices, like where you can, giving them little jobs, like especially when you've got the two kids, making them feel, part of it. Asking them to go get the wipes or the nappies and making them feel important can be helpful. Even giving them, like bringing out a particular, instead of having all the toys available at all times, having fewer things out on rotation and bringing out like a really exciting fun bag or box of toys during like feeding time with the newborn, or giving them their own little baby doll to feed, like things like that can be really, really helpful. And when it comes to like pushing the boundaries and things like that, we do find sometimes having like creating a bit of a bedtime chart or even little cards that they're posting into a box as they go through each one, or they're stamping it off or they're ticking it off, just kind of helps them feel a little bit more in control, and visually they can see what's happening and what comes next. But the act of actually stamping it off means that when you kind of get a bit of pushback and they're like, oh, now I want another sip of water or another book or another cuddle or whatever it is, you can kind of keep them on track and say, like, we've had the water, like what's next? And that kind of more visual thing. So there's lots of, for us, little practical things like that which can help. But then it is kind of going into the mind and looking at some of the more psychology-based strategies, which is often looking at what they're going through. So often if there's, underlying separation anxiety or things like that, it's really about understanding that and having strategies to sometimes deal with the underlying issue rather than do this whole band-aid, let's just get the sleep sorted if there's really some underlying problem.
And it's so tempting to have that short-term kind of fix solution that you want to
So tempting.
achieve,
And often with toddlers, like the short-term solution is, often distracting or bribing. And although it can often work, when you've got a clever little toddler, it's like the distractions need to get better and the bribes need to get bigger. And before you know it, you're in a full-on dressed up costume trying to bribe them like to get into the bath, doing a whole song and dance. And it's just not sustainable long-term for a lot of families.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And same goes for the newborn. I've found myself in situations with little Jude, when he wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh, was that a burp? Did I get that burp out? Oh, it kind of sounded like it, but yeah, that was good enough. Okay, let's put him back to sleep. You're looking for these short-term solutions because you're devoid of sleep. You're at wit's end and you're just like, you put him down and you know that he's going to be up uncomfortable 5 minutes later because of the gas. But these short-term solutions can be very, very tempting at that moment in time.
100%. And I think sometimes it is just about like doing whatever you can. Like we often call this survival mode, and just doing whatever you can, like to get the sleep happening or to get yourself back into bed. And the issue with that sometimes though is that it's not sustainable like long term. And like as they get older and more aware, sometimes they start really like needing you to do like X, Y, and Z, like in order to get back to sleep. So we're all about like, if it's not a problem, like unless it's a problem for you. And so for some parents, they're doing certain things and they're really happy with the way things are, and we're all for that. But where parents feel like, oh, this is really hard to be doing this day in, day out, every single day, that's where we go like, we are here, we want to help you, we want to take into account like your whole family situation, your little one's temperament. Like you're never going to do anything that's going to, psychologically be detrimental to your child. Like we're not about leaving kids to cry it out, like in order to get them to learn to sleep and things like that. There are very much psychology-based techniques and strategies. And if you work with the science and with your baby's biological clock and can introduce some positive sleep associations and know how to read different cues, then you can really go into your nights and your days with a solid plan, knowing when to resettle, when to offer a feed, when to just get them up. Like sometimes it just really helps having a plan to follow and having a toolbox filled with strategies specifically developed for your child that you can trust, so that you aren't kind of second guessing, going like, oh, like let's try this, didn't work, bin it, try something else. And then like rather than persisting with a few things which are actually proven scientifically to work. And I think it's kind of about surviving where you have to. And there's some days, believe it or not, where I myself, even knowing all this stuff, have definitely got into like doing whatever you can, like to just get the sleep happening because you're exhausted. And like I think that's totally okay. But I feel like when you're feeling up to it and you can kind of, you know, if you're laying the foundation majority of the time, then those times really like matter a lot less.
Oh, look, that makes so much sense to me. And I think as having that as a toolbox and a blueprint to work as a team with your partner,
Totally.
could
I
be
think
great.
it's so much about it is definitely that teamwork, and especially with the newborn stage as well. I think so many parents go into it just really like trying to survive, wishing it away, like they almost can't wait for it to be over. And for us, like we really want parents to go from surviving to thriving instead of wishing the time away, to almost like loving this stage. And they're little for so short, and with our techniques and strategies, you can still cuddle them. If you enjoy baby wearing, like you can still, you know, baby wear, you can do all these things while still shaping healthy sleep habits and laying a really good foundation. And I think it's really good for parents to know that it's not like one way or the other. You don't have to be, you know, a parent who's either in this boat or that boat, fully doing this or fully doing that. There is an option where you can kind of still lay that foundation and enjoy like soaking up those special moments. And that's like really, I guess, our number one passion is like pretty much, yeah, like laying that foundation. And like we just want parents to be able to just reclaim the joy of parenthood, really like love this stage if they can, be in it. As you said, I think it's, if you are in a partnership or relationship, like it being about like a team rather than you're on your own. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, incredibly wise words, and I think it's a great place to kind of rest this chat, because I think teamwork and communication is what you know, Hero is all about, and being able to be part of a community and a team for support to allow you to enjoy these times in life. Jenna, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat to us, and I'd love to also know where everyone can find you and your services. Obviously, if you're in person, there are in-person services, but you have these incredible abundance of online services that you have to offer.
Thank you. So yeah, if you want to know more, feel free to check out my website, which is www.sleepscienceguru.com, or you can find me on Instagram. My handle is sleep.science. Or on Facebook, which is Sleep Science Guru. We also have a village. So they say it takes a village to raise a baby. We've got like a community support group of, you know, parents helping out other parents. I jump on there to do some live Q&As every now and then, along with some fellow experts in different areas. So feel free to join the village as well. Right. The psychologist deep inside me also just wants to say that if anyone out there like is struggling, you're not alone. There's so many people. We really want to work at breaking the stigma, like especially with dads. So if you are worried that you're feeling anxious or upset or even angry towards your baby, please reach out to your trusted healthcare provider, such as, you know, your GP. There are so many incredible services out there, services like Panda, who we do try and support as much as we can, and they're out there doing an amazing job supporting parents. So check out those resources. Like, your well-being is so important.
Yeah, that's incredible. Great words. And thank you for your time, and thank you to the rest of your team for
Thanks
sitting
so much.
and having a good chat. Where are you, girls?
Say hi. They're all in the background saying hi.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for having us. It was so great chatting to you.
Thank you, Jenna. And yeah, we'll be in touch very, very soon.
Be
Thank you.
in touch.
I'm looking forward to the following and next courses for little Jude.